Ghislaine goes towards Elena, accelerated and thorns her, telling him what to tell her. I miss you. Elena Bacchi is strongly removed from it and says, let me go. He suffers and says what an amazing force of his child is this power, always says Alina. Blinda asked me to be here. What? The game is playing. Do you think this makes everything well? Apologize to the teacher, Belinda. He says I was not the closest to Elena in my last life. They didn't understand the apology. Blinda says, is Alina apologized, saying that I heard that old Galen besieged you. Did your head hit? Ghislaine says no. I really defeated them. Why do you continue to point out that I was beaten? Elena says yes. It is true that I was completely defeated. All of them, that case. I have even lost consciousness. He looks at them and smiles, saying to everyone as I remember, why did I miss my past? A lot of time and inevitable things. In the festival, which comes next week, Alina's offer to go together. I made in a sense because the events that occurred in the raid made me feel upset. That was the last time we saw it. Elena's body was found, trying to pieces with her personal guards. I should have. Suddenly with her, they heard the door beats. The personal guards of the Miss Elena, Philip and Jamal, enter them. She tells them whether something happened. I told you to wait abroad, Jamal says. We apologize for your request to supervise their work regarding the festival supplies. Ghislaine says, why they might ask. Elena says, Blinda, you will not know. Sir, because you are always lazy all day. Elena leaves and goes to work. Ghislaine says to himself, do we have a point in the workers? I did not care about these things at that time, so it is clear that I do not know. He is asking Elena to help her look at Binda and Elena to him as they are surprised. The young master goes with them to the market, but people in the market are afraid of it, and from working with it. Elena beats him, says, is this the way you treat someone who wants to help? Elena says the way you can help us is to stay away from our way and out of problems. The young master Ghislaine says in himself, the body of Elena was found near the poor neighborhoods away from the festival's land. One of her called her to there or forcibly transferred her there for those who have been needed to know the entrances and exits of the castle first. Judicially comes an old man towards washing while running and screaming. Sir says, are you fine? He goes to Mr. Al-Sham and says, your humble servant, fair goes. Elena is happy with the arrival of the old man, says a great time, O old man. The young master is upset and grabs his head and says I can't do anything about it. I will know what is going on around the castle better in the next week. The young master asks, the old man says, oh man, oh, there is an abandoned training field in the castle. So do you also take me there? The old man says, sorry. The field of training for any reason? The young man says to him, I want to train. Take me to him. They arrive at the training place. The young master Ghislaine looks at him and is surprised. He says, what is much better than what I expected? It is a completely suitable site for me to train in it. He looks at the weapons and says I have never seen anything like this as a mercenary. The old man says, we kept it in the event of your desire to use this facilities. I'm sure that what it is going through is just a stage. Mr. Al-Shazid says in himself in the life of the past, was he also cleaning it for me? If this is what happened, you go to the old man and say, you must live a long life. Oh old man, a feeling of death is disgusting. The old man says, I will give you a sorry. You are acting as if you have already tried life and death. The young master looks at her while he is smiling and says, as expected, I am serious. I have already died. The old man says, I think it is sufficient. In vain now, Moulay. The young master says on any solution that can be returned, O old man. He says to himself, I was always treating everyone around me, and they were my enemies. But I was just short-sighted. I have a week, at that time, can reveal that the person behind the death of Elena was a master from the neighboring area. Thanks to this, Bertium was involved in the war, which led to its fall. Elena's death was basically the starting point for the conditions of our house. This means that I must set things in their right affliction from the first. Here, the first needs to have a better physical structure. It is unfortunate that I do not have much time, but I must be able to control the mana at least. Mana is a supernatural supplier that allows humans to penetrate their borders. Most people say that the observation and absorption of mana is the most difficult part, but I was able to do this even in the chaotic battlefield. I have to connect the floating mana molecules in the air and collect it as if I were recycling for a person, like a person who has the news of thousands of tens of thousands of battles. The creation of Nawa mana is like eating the cake. But if it was so, I would not have been part of the 7 strongest on the ground. Using the way it is derived from the semi-burning magic book that I picked up, and the natural essence of Almana for human beings, I can create a multi-core network to create an explosive force. 3 nuclei is a limit, although I managed to reach a 5th in the past of the past. This method allows the creation of an explosive force in a short time, but also requires a very large amount of mana in return. This was the main reason that made me lose in front of Eden in the life of the past. Bring a full Farsani brigade to fight against me. When I carried out the mana from me, I would have definitely win if it was a fair battle. It is essentially unstable technology, but this is now enough for a young body and a lot of time. Your head is in the hands of this time, Eden. Even those times who stand behind the Delphin house. Those who helped destroy our time will destroy you all. The story moves us to the festival day. The young lady is preparing himself from weapons and several. He goes to the festival, looks at him. Elena is surprised and says, "You really came? What happened? You never come to these types of things." The young master, says, "As an individual from Bird, a day, I must come at least to the festivals from time to time." Elena looks at him and says that you were acting with his real exile recently. "I heard that you did nothing but training last week." The young master asks her, what is wrong with his successor, his family, all of whose members are knights. Elena says you didn't care about these types of things before. You are the person who said that my father was annoying, and that you were already wished for, the master. She tells him before you leave the place, and say anyway. I love the way that things are going on now. The young master says in himself, you realized something last week. Given that the effectiveness has changed, my reception and the future also start to change slowly. The general flow of things may be the same, but it is difficult to measure the effect of my actions on small events. The good benefit from the information received from the future is my job. I need to respond to each situation effectively. Now my preparations were completed for the festival. Elena holds the grandfather of the young master and goes with him with a tour of the festival. After a period of time to take a break, Elena says it was fun, but it became a little boring, with the matter remaining as it is every year. Is there something new this year? This year, the young master Ghislain says in himself, the festival ended almost, but nothing happened because I am with Ellen. While he was thinking about himself, attending the personal guards of Mrs. Elena, and telling her, do you want to check another area as well? According to my friend, there are new events elsewhere. What about that? Elena is really better to be fun to go to wander with them. The young master looks at them, and did not move from his place. Knights of accompanying Elena, Jamal, and Philip, have been reliable knights because they protected Elena, since she was his child. It was known that they were killed while protecting Elena in my past life. They reach one of the streets, blocked in all respects. Elena, looking at the streets, which isn't empty, there are only the boxes that cut roads and streets. Say, what is this? There is nothing here. Are you sure that there will be an offer in such a place and destiny? The personal goalkeeper, Jamal, says I think they are not ready after. People are soon here. Eileen behavior says do not make me laugh. Do you want to perform in a place like this? The young master looks at the place and says to himself as expected. This may seem as a simple, deserted at first glance, but given the places of obstacles that hinder the road to escape, they must have made preparations in advance. Elena, withdrawing the young side Ghislain, who has decided to stay away from this place. While his departure was one of the guards, he says, let's wait a little more. Elena, Philip say you are acting strangely. What sermons you today? Says the goalkeeper. I did not mean to fear you, but it came to us, a reasonable request. Elena says, and she is afraid of any request. Suddenly, some people go to the grammar. Elena and the young master, as they wear long clothes that cover them completely. They are hidden under it. The weapons say, the leader of Frank, who has white and long hair, and blackness, as expected to do your work clean. They say personal guards. No, Elena, of course. We have brought the lady a young man, as we promised. So let's finish his deal here. Frank looks at them and says, is this not the eldest son of Bird? On a day, do not think I asked to bring him here. The goalkeeper, Cecile, says, for free. We followed us with his foolishness. The young man looks at the personal guards and says, Jamal, you lose us. Do you really think that you can get out of this? Jamal says to the young master, who is smiling, why do not you start anxious about yourself first? All we have to do is to escape to a far place. They felt bored and tired of this poor land. I am sure that there are many others who left their tower in any case, right? Go the young man with the grammar, and make his body with a sword and say at least he never sold us. The young master, the god of Philip, looks and says that you do not think that. But he takes Alina, he says, and he is afraid to collect that fool. The young master throws his sword to hit Philip in the middle of his head, and fall on the ground. And Elena goes to her brother Ghislain. The guards who came with Frank say, are you sure that this is the oldest son of Bertium? I think he had no real fighting experience or basic training. Frank was annoyed, and said, if we judge through his appearance, I am not wrong. Frank says to himself, although they suddenly raided him, but he was immediately killed by 2 knights. With attacks, mana, Elena used the young master Ghislain. My big brother, what is happening? But he hit her to sleep directly to devote himself to the battle. Frank says, thank you for doing this work for us, O older son of Bertium. You are a lot different from what I heard. We were planning to take care of these ourselves. He approached the young master and says whether you were hiding your real skills. The young master looks at them. He says to himself, 3. You are the 2 who are next to him, not something. But what is in the middle has a large amount of mana, and at a different level. I must finish this quickly, the young man. The young man asks Frank, let me ask you one thing. Frank says, well, there's something that a dead man knows that. The young master says, I knew that you would not say that easily. It does not matter. The young master prepares his sword to fight them. He says you will want to speak soon, including enough, anyway. Frank, there's of the 2 people who were with him to hold him alive, and break it all the party in his body, so that he cannot resist him with madness. He has to suffer a lot until his body is beautiful. They go quickly towards the young master to try to kill him. The young master attacks them, and one of them hit his head to fall on the ground. The second person tries to attack the young man, but he repels the attack. The attack is returned to him, and his head is cut off from the young master and Ghislain from behind. The young master feels a surprise attack from behind and is confronting him. Frank did not understand what happened. He says to himself, was he able to repel off my offensive in this position? It was also an ideal, suggestive attack. The master of the people attacking Frank. The attack affects your sins in his neck, but he continues the attack on the young master, and was not affected by the injury. Farmik says I am surprised. If I was missing the mana, I would have cut my head. Now, did El Mana focus on his neck to reduce the damage? Frank says, I have no thought. How you teach you such a strange duel in this matter, but you will die here.